100% women, celebrating women.
I'm a woman with.
Well, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of 100% Woman, Real FM 95.1. This program is a program that aims to give women a voice in society and in the world at large. 100% Women gives women a voice because women should not just be seen, they should also be heard. There has been an alarming rate of suicides in Nigeria lately, and it needs an urgent call for action. Nigeria placed fifth with 15,000 suicides in every 100,000 suicides. So today I have a very special guest in the studio with me, and his name is Dr. Ayo Omotosho. He's a honorary consultant psychiatrist. We're having a very in-depth conversation on this situation which needs urgent attention. So do stay with me as we go for a timeout. But when we come back, we'll get right into this conversation. We'll talk about this. And is it the case that women are more prone to suicide, or is it the reverse? Is it that men are more prone, or is it that women are more prone to suicide? We get more on this and, of course, a lot more after this timeout. Please stay tuned. So what is the cause of all this? And I said earlier, I have in the studio with me Dr. Ayo Omotosho, honorary consultant psychiatrist. And he's very vast in this field. He is a honorary and a consultant psychiatrist and a lecturer at the Department of Behavioral Sciences. He's also a fellow of the West African College of Physicians. Also has a master's degree in child and adolescent mental health. So I want to welcome you today, Dr. Omotosho, to the program.
Thank you very much.
It's good to be here. Time out of your busy schedule to be here.
The pleasure is all mine.
Really appreciate you. So let's really get into this. Why, I'm sure you've noticed as well, because this is your field anyways. Why is it that there has been such a very, very alarming rate, a rise in the case of suicide in Nigeria lately?
Well, good morning, listeners around the world. Suicide generally refers to the killing of oneself. That's a simple way of looking at it. Suicide is an action with a fatal outcome in which a person deliberately takes some steps with the knowledge of the fatal outcome. That's what suicide is. And the suicide rates have been on the rise. There are various possible reasons for this. Suicide is actually a complex action that one then needs to tease out. One of the possible things is, the question first of all is, are suicide rates rising, or is the reporting of suicide rising? Or could it be a combination of both? Suicide rates are rising, the reporting is rising, and then there's also a bi-directional relationship with this, because the more cases are being reported, and this is why, of course, you emphasize things about responsible reporting and making sure that one is not sensational in the reporting of cases of suicide, because with the rise in reporting of suicides, there's also a rise in the prevalence, because someone who then has problems and sees that there's a lot of depictions and descriptions of ways and manners in which people committed suicide, then put suicide on the list of solutions when they're faced with a problem. But then, by and large, that said, we can say that some of the reasons that suicide rates are rising in society today could be for biopsychosocial reasons. But there are biological reasons to explain this, there are psychological reasons, and then there are social reasons.
Now, do you mind breaking that down a little bit?
Yes. Okay, well, generally, I'll start from the social factors. The world we live in today is a fast-paced world. And there's a lot of comparison going on. You know, there's social media, for instance, and people have even talked about concepts like Facebook depression. That is there a concept of mental health problems that are arising as a result of the influence of social media. Yes, it's called social, but at the end of the day, it reduces our social interaction. So you see 5 people in a room all communicating, but not with one another. They're communicating with somebody else, someplace else. So our human communication tends to reduce with the influence of social media. Then again, the fact that one gets to see what's happening in the lives of other people, or what is said to be happening. Because, you know, sometimes someone may take a selfie, for instance, in a place that looks posh, the place looks opulent, but then it's not necessarily the front of their house. So there's this other person who's seeing those pictures and then getting sad because, oh, I wish I could be like that, I wish I could have that kind of life. So there's the role of social media in the current world, which we did not have just about 15 years ago. So the demographics are changing. The other thing... Now,
if you don't mind me just cutting you off there, so sorry. Now, would you say that then, before the age of social media and now, there has been a decline or in mental health? Okay, let me put this question like this. Now, there was a time when there was no social media, and now there is social media.
Yes.
How has mental health been impacted
by social media?
By social media.
That's actually...
Would you say then it was healthier? People had healthier mental health statuses compared to now?
Well, that's a very broad question. Because there are various aspects to that, the pros and the cons. For instance, with the role of technology, there have been improvements even in medical services, medical care and all of that, even mental health care. There's been more awareness, so there are the positives as well. But then also with technology, particularly with things like internet addiction, which is a concept that has been talked about in recent times, there is also a rise in some mental health problems, such as being addicted to the internet, such as depression. That can also occur as well. But this is only one out of the myriad of factors that are social. It
seems to me that it's a very complex issue, that it is very detailed, that we can't even get through even 1/3 of it today on the show.
That's absolutely true. But if I had to wrap it up in one statement, it would be that there are social factors and only one of them is social media. Other social factors that are quite relevant to this: social isolation. There are some people that feel that if I die, nobody's gonna miss me. Who really would miss me if I go? And that's when one gets to the end of the spectrum of social isolation, is referred to as malignant alienation. So let me give you a typical scenario. Let's assume this is a woman's show. Let's assume that there's a woman that doesn't feel loved by her husband, and then she begins to resent him. Let's say that she begins to perhaps take alcohol, and then she loses her job because she gets drunk. Her children don't like the fact that mommy is taking a substance. They feel it's strange. So now she doesn't have support from children. She doesn't have from her husband. She has lost her job. She feels all alone. That's malignant alienation. And that's actually, those are multiple risk factors for suicide. Substance use is a risk factor for suicide. Being socially isolated is a risk factor. Taking substances is a risk factor. Other risk factors include personality disorders. And by the way, borderline personality disorders, which can be seen in some women, could explain why some people slash their wrists and get impulsive and all of that. And impulsivity by itself is also a risk factor for suicide. So we see that complex factors culminate and merge in the propensity towards suicide. And apart from this social as well as psychological factors, there are also biological factors. So we see that sometimes suicide may run in some families. For instance, there was a woman in the US. She was highly successful. She was a judge.
Yes.
And one day she just drove to the Hudson River, parked her car, and drowned herself. And there was obviously no evidence of a struggle, so it was clear that it was suicide. And this happened around Easter period. And by the time they traced it, her brother, the previous Easter, had died in a similar way, committed suicide. Her mother had done something similar. So that there may be a genetic link as well in some instances.
So there is also genetic link to suicide as well?
Yes, in some instances.
Wow.
This is not to say that everybody who commits suicide has a family history or has a family predilection.
It's funny that you say that, because I came across a story as I was researching for this program, and it was about a woman who had 3 sons that committed suicide.
Yes.
3 sons. So it kind of like ties in a way. I don't know.
Yes,
Maybe it could be genetically
possible.
linked or something.
It's possible. And then, there's a chemical in the brain. It's what we, in lay terms, refer to as the happy chemical. The name is serotonin.
Yes.
And it's been shown that there are very low levels of serotonin in the brain. That's the cerebrospinal fluid. That's the juice or the liquid around the brain. There are very low levels of that happy chemical.
Okay.
And so that's another biological reason that may explain suicide. But by and large, the psychological reasons are, number one, hopelessness. If someone gets to the end of the rope, by their own perception being the end of the rope, they think that what's the point living? Actually, many people who commit suicide really do not want to end their lives. They just want to end the situation or end the problem. And they don't see another way, another solution to the problem rather than ending it all by taking their own lives.
Now, in Nigeria, let's really hone in on Nigeria.
Right.
Nigeria, specifically, what do you think is the reason why a lot of youths are committing suicide, both men and women?
Yes. Well, depression is one of the big reasons why people commit suicide.
In Nigeria?
Yes.
Why do you think the rate of depression do you think it's rising, or what do you think is...
Definitely the rates of depression, the rates are rising, not only in Nigeria, but around the world.
Okay.
Even the WHO had projected this, really, that depression rates were going to rise. And there's a way we now look at illnesses. In the past, we used to look at illnesses based on if this illness can make you die, then it's a really severe illness. But we're seeing more and more that there are illnesses that people live with that they may not necessarily die, but then they're living with lifelong morbidity rather than mortality. And when we now had that new perspective about disability adjusted life years, we started seeing that depression actually ranks really high amongst all the disorders. This is grouping after you've grouped them with disorders like cardiac problems, heart problems, all sorts of physical problems as well. Depression is one of the first 2 most important illnesses that the 21st century physician needs to tackle. So depression rates in Nigeria, for instance, there are specific reasons why women are more depressed. In fact, around the world, women are more depressed than men. The rates of depression are twice in women as they are in men. So this is not just about...
Why is that the case?
Exactly. Yes. There are many reasons for this.
Okay.
For instance, women experience more stress, and there's a link between stress and depression. Women are often in the middle. There's a concept of women in the middle. If there's an aged parent, a woman is more likely to be the caregiver. If children need to go to school, that woman is still the same person that raises those kids. She supports her husband as well. And then coupled with all of those social responsibilities and obligations, she still has to go to work. So this person is vocationally stretched, financially stretched, and socially also there are demands on her. So that's one reason. Another reason is that there's a concept of learned helplessness. There are many women in situations where they feel trapped, they feel there's no hope, and that's why this show is good, in that you're saying that women should not just be seen but also heard. There are many women who feel that they can't put form to their voice or words to their thoughts. So if a woman is in that kind of situation, she then feels like she's crying in silence, and she then may become depressed. Another reason why depression is higher in women than men is pregnancy and related events like childbirth. The hormones of pregnancy sustain the baby all through, but then there's a crash in those hormones at the time she gives birth. So some women give birth, for instance, and then they start crying. They are even confused because they're wondering, this is a bundle of joy. Why am I teary? Why am I irritable? Why am I cranky? That could be for various reasons. And in some women, not all women, but in some women, that tearfulness that happens right after birth
Yes.
may then continue into a phase of depression, and that's called postnatal depression, the depression that happens when a mother is nursing a baby. So there are various reasons at the end of the day that put women more at risk of depression. By the way, because this program is specifically about suicide,
Yes.
attempted suicide is actually more in women than in men. Completed suicide is more in men, and this is because men use more violent means. A man is more likely to get a shotgun if he wants to commit suicide or jump off a cliff, things that are totally final and fatal. But then a woman may take a lot of pills or may take some poisonous substance, those kind of less dangerous methods. But then if we look at the number of attempts around the world, the attempts of suicide are actually more in women. And here's the thing about suicidal attempts.
Okay.
The more the attempts, the more the risk of suicide itself. So someone that has attempted suicide is more prone to trying it again than someone who had never attempted it before. In fact, it's 100 times more. The risk of committing suicide after there's been an attempt is 100 times. So that means that we really need to see how to build support systems around women to help women concerning suicide and related matters. There's a 2/3 rule. 2/3 of everybody who would commit suicide would have told somebody 2 to 3 weeks before they actually do so. So it's important to take the matter seriously.
So, what do you think the perception of the society is, especially when it comes to Nigeria? Let's talk about Africa. Now, what is a perception towards those who are depressed, or towards those who are attempting suicide, or towards those that have been saying it out that I'm thinking about doing this? Do you think people really care, or people really are very take them seriously?
Well, in terms of caring,
Yes.
I would say it's important to care. I mean,
Yes.
people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So it's important to care. And many people, I would say, really do care. It's just that they don't know how to relate with these things.
I have come across, there was a time on my Facebook feed, there was someone who said he wanted to commit suicide. And below in the comment section, some people would say, "Go ahead and kill yourself now."
Here's the
and
thing
stuff
about
like that.
Yes, I heard that around the same time you were doing those posts.
Yes.
I heard some of those comments. And here's the thing. People don't often say those kinds of things when they truly believe that that person would commit suicide.
Okay.
When people talk that way, it's reactionary. It's because they think that, oh, this person is just trying to gain attention. They don't get it. They don't understand it. So it's not that people are taking a stance of insensitivity.
Okay.
It's more of ignorance than insensitivity. People don't actually know that mental health problems are real and that suicidal ideation is real. And when someone says they want to kill themselves, that's an emergency. It's a mental health, psychological emergency that needs to be taken seriously. And that's why people joke about it, because they've been hearing it so much on the news, on social media, and they're getting numb towards it. But rather, we should rise to the occasion, be passionate about it, and help anyone who says they want to kill themselves.
Okay, so first stop, you come across a friend or maybe a sibling or sister, brother, or someone who says they want to commit suicide or have been thinking about committing suicide, or they might not be upfront like that. They could just say, "I'm just tired of this life. I'm sick, just being frustrated generally."
Yes.
What should be the first thing
That you
that
do.
person should do?
Well, here's the thing.
Yes.
I'll mention first of all the thing that you should not do.
Okay.
So that it then becomes easier
Okay.
to understand what to do.
Okay.
When someone says, "I want to kill myself," the first thing not to do is to tell the person to stop saying it.
Okay.
We have a tendency in our environment of viewing things through a cultural lens, sometimes even a religious perspective that makes us say, "Oh no, don't talk like that. Oh no, don't say what's on your mind. Oh, why would you say?" Rather than try and shut the person down or ignore the person, rather than shun or shut them down, you should sit down with them and listen to them. Let them speak, because that speaking in itself is part of therapy. When they're able to voice out and ventilate what it is that's on their mind, they
Yes.
begin to feel better. And make sure that conversation does not end without you ensuring that they see a specialist. And I should preempt myself by mentioning that there are helplines
Okay.
around Nigeria at the moment.
Are those helplines really, really functioning?
Well, to give you an example of that,
Yes.
this month alone,
Yes.
personally, we've had to, in Ilorin, this is not even talking about around Kwara or even around Nigeria.
Yes.
The helplines have been used for no less than 5 people successfully who intended to commit suicide. There were cases that we found out online on social media. The person was expressing suicidal intent, and via the helplines we were able to link those individuals with a network of professionals that then helps them.
And then
through their
again,
depressive phase.
it boils down to the issue of money, because I'm sure, of course, health generally is quite expensive when it comes to mental health issues. How affordable is it for those that have mental health issues? How affordable is it for them to access this kind of health care?
Well, I would say that it's no more expensive than getting treatment for malaria.
Oh, really?
That's what I would say, yes. Because generally with suicidal ideation, there's a group of professionals right now in Nigeria that are ensuring that we get the relevant help for the contemporary mental health problems. So at the Department of Behavioral Sciences in the teaching hospital, for instance, we see cases of people that have suicidal ideation.
Okay.
And then also there's a group called SERPIN. It's a national body of psychiatrists in Nigeria, which is a population of, pushing 200 million people. We have barely about 250 psychiatrists. So, that's 250 people or 300 people at the most, to a population of over 200 million. So we're creating structures to ensure that even though those on ground are not so many, we're getting the relevant help. And thankfully, we also have support systems from people who are the allied professionals, the psychologists, the social workers. It's a multidisciplinary approach, the occupational therapists, the nurses as well. So everybody, hands are on deck to ensure that there's some help that is gotten.
We have to go for a break now, but when we come back, I really want to ask you the question, why is it that there's such a low amount of psychiatrists or psychologists in the country? 250 alone compared to more than 200 million people?
Right.
We'll ask that question. We come back. I'm really shocked and I'm really surprised. I can't believe it. Okay, we'll be right back after this. Please stay tuned. Yes, we all bleed the same, so we should stand with each other and support each other in whatever we are going through. Okay, so it is still 100% Woman on the program on Real FM 95.1 Ilorin. And I still have with me in the studio Dr. Ayo Omotosho, a honorary consultant psychiatrist. So I was going to ask you the question before we went for that break. I said, why is it that we just have 250? Is it psychiatrists alone or both psychiatrists and psychologists?
No, this is just psychiatrists.
Just psychiatrists,
yes.
Okay, how about psychologists?
Well, I don't have the specific figure of psychologists, but I know that we don't have many psychologists either. And in the last report, the latest report I saw about this, it's actually a problem that spans around sub-Saharan Africa. So in Nigeria, actually, where we have 250, which is very small, we still have, if we look at the proportion in some other African countries, they have only one psychiatrist.
Why is that the case, though? What's going on?
There are many different factors with this. This is a whole different topic on its own. There are many different reasons for this.
So would it be safe for me to say that if that is the case, then the possibility of getting this thing down when it comes to mental health will drastically be almost impossible?
Well, I wouldn't use terms like impossible.
Okay.
Because we're very hopeful people. It's part of our job to promote hope. but the government really does need to be involved. And a lot of the efforts that are going on right now include trying to get the mental health bill to even be passed. And, whatever support people can give to that bill, that would really be helpful, because we have a very old bill that comes from around colonial times and all. And it's important that we begin to address the contemporary mental health issues that are going on right now. So there's a bill that's gone through the second hearing, and we hope that things will get better and we'll get more government support. But even at that, on the subject of suicide, I like the fact that you mentioned that we all should rally around one another.
Yes.
For instance, this is a women's program where we've talked about depression, we've talked about suicide in women. But here's the thing, even though suicide attempts are more in women, completed suicide is more in men. So that means that we need to also begin to look at the impact of suicide in men on women. Because if we want to focus on women, one way to do that in a holistic way is to also look at the impact that it has. What happens if a daughter loses her father to suicide? What happens if a wife loses her husband to suicide? What happens when a mother loses her children? You mentioned the example of a mother who lost 3 sons to suicide. So these are key issues. And for instance, in homes where there's no father, there's also a predilection to some other mental health problems. So we see that at the end of the day, we need each other and we need to support one another. And one of the preventive things that we could even talk about is, even from childhood, we need to start encouraging both girls and boys to express themselves. Rather than tell a boy, oh, don't cry, men don't cry, and to equate crying and emotional expressivity with weakness.
Is there anything wrong with a man crying
Absolutely
or
not.
expressing his emotions?
Absolutely not.
Yes.
So we're putting this on record, saying it on radio.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with a man expressing his emotions. Actually, emotional expression is a symbol of strength. Because when you're able to communicate, you're able to say just how you feel, it's therapeutic all by itself. And even around the world, so it's not just here. In the UK, for instance, women are 8 more times likely to see a specialist complaining about an emotional problem rather than keeping it all to themselves. So men generally have this thing where they bottle things up, and men are more likely to medicate their depression with substances.
Now, please, let me ask this question, because we're a very, very religious group, or we're very, very, we love religion, or we are very religious in this country, or even Africa generally. Now, when it comes to mental health issues, is it, would you say that it's okay for people just to look at it from a religious perspective, or would you say they should also seek professional help as well, mental health? Professionals.
Well, I like the fact that you've asked that question, because
I'm sorry to say, but it seems like every solution people think has to do with religion. They have to go to their pastors, their imam, to seek for solutions. What would be your own take?
Yes, what's the role of religion in mental health? Well, that's a very interesting question, because there are pros and cons. Religion actually has its own benefits. It actually has its own role in mental health. For instance, when we talk about the definition of health in mental health, we talk about physical, social, emotional, and spiritual well-being. So it's a holistic thing. And when people go for religious activities, remember I mentioned that social isolation is one of the big factors that leads to depression and then suicide. So people who feel integrated into a community, it could be a religious community, such people actually have a protective factor against suicide in that. There are people that we've seen, for instance, who had suicidal ideation, they had suicidal intent, but what kept holding them back was their religious belief about committing suicide, that I think there's hope. My religion teaches me to still have some hope.
I think what I'm trying to ask is that in addition to their religious belief, do you think they should also seek professional mental health as well?
Which is where I'm going. So I started with that to talk about the one aspect of it that one may neglect, and then coning down right now to the fact that regardless of your religious background, if you have a mental health problem, see a mental health specialist. In much the same way that if your car breaks down by the roadside on the express, while you still retain your religious beliefs and you don't lose your faith because your car broke down, but then you pick up your phone and you call the mechanic because you know that he's specialized in that area in taking care of cars. So many people tend to look at mental health problems as problems that are diffuse, problems that are elusive, problems that are spiritual, problems that are not tangible. If someone has a fractured bone, for instance, they don't see any problem in seeing a specialist at the emergency because they can palpate the problem. It's physical. They can relate with it. But when there's a mental health problem, which can be viewed as a fracture of the mind, that person also needs to see a specialist so they get better. Unfortunately, there have been so many recent cases of suicide where what happened was someone was just trying to encourage that person, but then they weren't seeing a professional or a specialist.
So you're saying in addition to seeking religious help, also seek professional mental health.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That in addition to your integration into your religious circles, which has its own mental health benefits of religiosity, spirituality, and boosting the chemicals in the brain. For instance, religious activities like dancing, singing, all of those actually increase the endorphins and the brain. So it has its own role, its own social, mental health benefits, psychosocial benefit, if you may. And in addition to all of that, do not neglect to see a mental health specialist, because that is what then helps particularly a person with suicidal ideation to get out of that situation and to solve that psychiatric emergency. Okay,
thank you very much. All right, if you want to call in to ask a few questions, please do maybe one or two calls. You just take a few calls, one or two calls. 0810-850-1371, 0810-850-1371. And let's move on to this question, Dr. Omotosho. Let's talk about stigmatization. Some people might be very reluctant to seek mental health specialists because of the way they might be perceived. Maybe people might start thinking they're going crazy or going out of their mind. Talk about that a little bit.
All right, stigmatization is a big thing in mental health, and it cuts across.
Yes, I think we have a call coming in. I'm so sorry.
All right.
Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon. Good morning.
Yes. All right. Please go ahead. Please go ahead with the question.
Please, is it to get a lecturer in the class or is it assisting? Because the way he is telling all these things, but I want it to be produced again on this station, please.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you very much, sir.
0810-850-1371 if you want to call in. 0810-850-1371. I was just telling him that we have to have a seminar on this and we have to have him on. Hello. Hello, good morning. What's your name? Yes, what is your name, please? Oh, please. Okay, go ahead.
I would love to speak to Dr. Hakari. I don't know if I speak to him. I actually yes.
Okay, all right. How do we do it now? Can I get your, how do I do it? Should I get your number? Okay. You know what? Could you just give me your, I don't know how I'm going to do this. How do you suggest I do this?
Here's what we can do.
Yes.
We can.
Are you still there? Okay. Yes.
Right up to the show, I think we can speak with her, so she can call.
You know what you can do is, can you call this number immediately after the show? Immediately after the show, I'll get your details, and then we will find out how you can go ahead and see him privately. Okay. Thank you so much for calling in. Appreciate. Make sure you call back, okay? Please, after the show. Okay, thank you so much. All right, okay, so let's move ahead about the stigmatization, Dr. Omotosho.
Yeah, stigmatization, it's actually a big one, and to jump straight into what we can do about it, I think as a society we need to have a rethink as a group, as a people. We need to start being more empathic. We need to start being more psychologically minded. We need to be less superstitious, and we need to address issues for what they are. If someone is sad, let's sit down and talk about it. Don't tell them to keep quiet. If someone says they're tired, don't assume that it's because they've been playing football. Find out if they're tired of life. Someone may be tired in their body, someone may be tired in their mind, someone may be suicidal and simply say, I'm tired. And if we're not sensitive enough to listen to people, we'll be, losing a lot of vibrant people that can be with us in society and make things better. And generally, concerning stigma, I would also mention the role of the media. Because it's important that the movies we're putting out there, African Magic, Nollywood, we shouldn't project mental health as something that is punitive. So you see that a woman has done something wrong in her lower years, and then mental illness then becomes a punishment at the end of the movie.
Hello, yes. Good morning. What is your name?
Good morning. My name is Australia.
All right, what's the question?
Please, Dr. Omotosho talked about some helplines that we can call.
Yes, we'll give it out. Don't worry. Yes. All right, thank you so much for reminding us about that. We'll give it out. We are out of time right now, but I think it's so important to give out the helplines, like she said. Please, what are the helplines?
Okay, so there are 3 of them.
Yes.
The first one is 090
090
80
80
21
21
7555.
7555.
That's the first one.
Okay.
The first one again, 090 80 21 7555.
7555. Okay.
Yes, and then the second one is 090 34
Okay.
40000
Okay.
9.
Okay.
And then the final one is 070
Okay.
138
Okay.
11143.
Okay, and people should call these helplines if what?
Yes, if they're feeling like they want to take their own lives,
Okay.
or if they notice that they have a neighbor who wants to do that.
And can they be assured of privacy, confidentiality?
Absolutely,
and all
because the
that?
person on the other end of the line would be a professional that handles the
Because
matter.
I think that's another thing that people get worried or concerned about
Yes.
their privacy and them being given that confidentiality that they need. They need a confidant,
Yes.
not someone who will broadcast their personal issues.
Definitely.
Okay.
The people handling this are professionals,
Okay.
and they're specialists
Okay.
regarding suicide and related matters. So
Okay.
the matter will be handled with confidentiality and the highest
Okay.
level of
Are there any other
professionalism.
kind of resources that people can have when it comes to mental health, suicides, and all that kind of stuff?
Yes. There are various groups, even in Ilorin,
Okay.
right now at the moment, that are having a movement in talking about suicide and related matters. And then also people who have a problem and want to see a specialist can also come to the teaching hospital, where you can receive a lot of care regarding this. Of course, there are various modes, various specialists and professionals that can attend to mental health problems in Ilorin.
Okay.
And not just Ilorin, because we're aware that some of our listeners are elsewhere in Nigeria
Yes.
and in other parts. These hotlines are actually national hotlines or helplines for suicide.
Okay. So they're not necessarily so they're not here in Ilorin or anything like that.
We have a network of professionals around Nigeria.
Okay, so they have professionals in Ilorin as well. Okay.
Professionals in Ilorin as well. I'm one of the professionals in Ilorin,
great.
for instance, and there are other professionals in Ilorin handling this. So if someone calls and says they're in Abuja, for instance, and they feel like committing suicide, we link them with a part of the network that is there.
Okay.
We have a directory where we have the location of everybody. The psychiatrist in Taraba, the one in Adamawa, the one in Maiduguri, Ilorin, Ondo, everywhere. So once you let us know your location, we then link you up with the network so that you get help that same day or as soon as possible.
The very last question is someone right now listening to us right now who wants to commit suicide and very, very serious about it. In fact, they are done with life. What would you say to that person?
The first thing I would say to that person is, from a non-judgmental stand, that there must be a lot of things that have gone through your mind. You must have gone through a process before coming to this point where you felt like you should end it all. And we empathize with you, and we really feel for you, even though we don't know the full details of what you're going through. We know that it must be significant enough for you to think that perhaps you should end it all. But then there's a lot of hope, and we really don't want you to think about killing yourself. We know that many people who want to end it all really just want to end the problem rather than take their own lives, and would like to tell you that if you're still alive, if there's still breath in your nostrils, then there's hope. Where there's life, there is hope, even if it's debts. Some of the richest Africans in the world are some of the biggest debtors in the banks, and they borrow money so that they can finance their business. So whatever it is it financial, is it even marital, or is it based on a relationship, heartbreak, whatever it it is, you can always bounce back. And we're not going to say man it up as though it's weakness to express emotions, or we're not going to say, oh, just handle it by yourself. You can come and see a professional and you can talk things through, and you'll be glad you did. And by the time you look back at this phase of life, you'd realize that it was worth it, that you fought for life.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Ayo Omotosho. Dr. Omotosho has been amazing with all the great, valuable information he has given out this morning. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here.
I appreciate.
I mean, he's so
time.
busy, but he actually had to really create time to come here today. Sacrifice. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Like I was saying, I'll have to kind of organize a seminar or something, because we really had to have a long time really discussing this issue, because it's really serious and we really need to tackle this. Okay, so thank you once again, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that is it for the program, 100% Women today. I assure you, this helplines, I'll probably do a PSA on this helpline so that it can be broadcast every time I have this show, so that I can always have it available. Okay, also okay, great. Okay, all right, okay, perfect. So I'll definitely okay, so I would definitely get the helplines done into some kind of like a public service announcement, to always make sure it airs on this program. Thank you so much for listening. Do join me next week Tuesday at 11 a.m. for another fantastic episode of 100% Woman. I am Timi Takwe Oluleye. Take good care of yourself and have a nice day. Remember, your life is more valuable than suicide. Take good care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Over 50 years since Nigeria's independence, the country is yet to have a female governor.
We have entertainment, TV and channels, so why not one for women that are more than half the world population, doing so much for survival of the world?
We teach girls shame. Close your legs, cover yourself. We make them feel as though by being born female, they're already guilty of something.
Saying a woman should only be seen and not to be heard is violence against women.
Women are a vital part of our existence, the mothers of our children, our support. Hence, they deserve to live full lives 100%.
Tune in every Tuesday by 11 a.m.
on Royal FM 95.1 for the program 100% Women, 100% Women, celebrating women.